Moving on to Bangladesh now. The ongoing clashes between the students and the security forces over a quota bill have left at least 50 people dead and hundreds injured. The country's main state TV station has been set on fire. The internet has been temporarily suspended. In fact, the telecommunications blackout has cut off Bangladesh from the rest of the world. As such, the entire country is engulfed in chaos, to say the least. Information is trickling in slowly. Let's just take a step back and tell you what this unrest is all about. It basically stems from deep-seated anger over a quota system that reserves 56% of the government jobs for certain groups, including 30% for the descendants of the 1971 freedom fighters. People are demanding a complete overhaul of the system, outrightly rejecting Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, whom they now label a dictator, for her government's brutal crackdown on the protesters, as many are calling it. Earlier this week, Hasina had shut all universities and colleges, the epicenters of the protest, indefinitely. On Wednesday, Hasina gave a speech denouncing the deaths of students killed in the protests and urged the protesters to wait until the final order. However, it has done little to quell the situation. As per reports, the sound of tear gas, gunfire, flash grenades echoed in areas close to the universities in the country's capital, Dhaka, on Friday. Many government buildings, including the Bangladesh Bridge Authority's main headquarters, were torched by angry protesters. Many streets across the national capital appeared deserted, with burnt vehicles lying on the side of the road, a common sight. Besides Dhaka, there have been reports of violence in 47 of Bangladesh's 64 districts in relation to this protest. In central Bangladesh district of Narsingdi, students protested protesters allegedly entered a jail and freed inmates before setting it on fire. The tone of the protesters also has, by the way, gradually become more anti-government, against Hasina and her party, the Awami League. Even amid the crackdown on the phone and internet connectivity, protesters found a way to hack top government websites on Friday, and several official websites in Bangladesh appeared to be hacked, as per reports. Websites like the Prime Minister's office, police, central bank were among those that were reportedly hacked. Allegedly, on the Prime Minister's office website, multiple messages were left by the hackers. One message read, "Stop killing students," and another in red capital letters similar to blood. I'm quoting, "It's not a protest anymore, it's a war now," quote unquote. And later in the page, another message stated that the government has shut down the internet to silence us and hide their actions, quote unquote. The international community is also monitoring the developments very closely. The UN chief Antonio Guterres has urged restraint from all sides. India's Ministry of External Affairs, meanwhile, urged all Indians staying in Bangladesh to avoid travel and stay indoors on Friday. And just to understand the issue better, we need to look at the entire background. Sheikh Hasina has been Bangladesh's prime minister for over 28 years. Her tenure is marked by allegations of high-level corruption and turning Bangladesh into what many call a party state. Her opponents claim she has centralized power to the point of authoritarianism. The police's response to students protesting the quota system only fuels the growing anti-incumbency sentiment against her. Students are openly declaring they would prefer Razakars over what they see as her dictatorship. This term refers to the East Pakistani volunteers who sided with Pakistan during the 1971 War of Independence, committing horrific acts against Bangladeshis. And being called that term is the worst insult in Bangladeshi society. But now, students chant, "We are Razakars," as a taunt against Sheikh Hasina, reflecting the depths of their anger and frustration. The protest's roots lie in a broader social and economic context. In the year 2018, after violent nationwide protests, the government scrapped the quotas for first and second-class jobs. However, on June 5th this year, the Bangladesh High Court ruled that the 2018 circular was illegal, effectively reinstating the quotas. And this court decision triggered the current wave of protests, which further intensified when the Prime Minister, in a press conference, questioned if the grandchildren of Razakars should get quota benefits. This statement provoked fierce backlash, leading to the now ubiquitous chant, "Who are you? Who am I? We are Razakars. Who is branding us? The dictator," quote unquote. Now, it's important to remember that Sheikh Hasina's father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the then Prime Minister of Bangladesh, was the first person to introduce the 30% quota for the descendants of freedom fighters in 1972. Rahman was from the same party as Hasina, the Awami League. As per political experts, a large number of protesters look at the 30% quota for the descendants of 1971 freedom fighters as one that will directly benefit the descendants of Awami League leaders, many of whom had fought in the war, further agitating the protesters. Meanwhile, following the government's appeal, the Bangladesh Supreme Court has suspended the High Court's reinstatement of quotas and set a date for August 7 to hear the government's challenge to the High Court ruling. While Hasina and her government agree with the students on removing the quota, protesters are demanding legal amendment against the quota altogether, citing lack of trust in the government. And with the country standing at this crucial juncture, the quota protests, marked by widespread violence and public outrage, signal growing resistance against Hasina's rule. And to delve deeper into what's going on in Bangladesh right now, with me on the broadcast is former High Commissioner to Bangladesh, Wion Sikri. Thanks very much for being here on the broadcast. I have to begin by asking you for your assessment of what's really playing out in Bangladesh at this point. The unrest, of course, becoming a growing cause of concern.
First of all, as you yourself pointed out in your excellent introduction, the country, Bangladesh, has been without quotas for 6 years. So now to go back and blame Sheikh Hasina for something that she herself removed in 2018 when the students had protested, I think that does not really quite gel with the situation. So it seems more and more likely as we are moving ahead that the use of the term Razakars in the press conference by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been misused by the protesters or those who are now egging them on to define themselves as Razakars. It is absolutely unbelievable to see that students of universities like Dhaka University and others. Dhaka University students were at the core of the liberation war in 1971. The students of Dhaka University were the ones who were the first to go ahead and become Mukti Joddhas and take up arms and be trained and to go and fight the Pakistani genocide. And to think that their descendants are now going to say that we are Razakars, it is really something quite unbelievable. It looks much more as though they are being instigated to be so. And I must draw attention to another point that when the High Court judgment came, as you have yourself said, on the 5th of June, the protests by the students started at that time. Those protests were against the High Court decision, not against Sheikh Hasina. They were worried that the High Court decision would then mean that the reservations would come back and Sheikh Hasina's decision taken in 2018 would be overturned. So their protests were against the High Court. And then as it went on, the government took action against that. But Sheikh Hasina kept telling the students that please wait till the Supreme Court decision on August 7th. And I can assure you that the decision will be something that will please everybody. So she has obviously been working, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been working behind the scenes to make sure that when the Supreme Court gives its verdict on August 7th, it will, the students will be happy and the government will be happy and it will be a consensus decision. But after the Razakar's remark at the press conference, that remark, by the way, was not to call the students Razakars. The students were actually being told that, look, I will, if any concessions had to be given, it will be given to the children of freedom fighters, but not to the Razakars who were against the freedom. So I think the misuse of this quotation, the instigation of widespread riots, most of the killing of students have taken place after that press conference. In fact, about 20 or more students died in the last 2, 3 days. And as we
Can I
know
just
that
ask you
last night,
this? Since you yourself
yes,
pointed out that using this term is of serious concern, and like we also pointed out, it is the greatest insult in Bangladeshi society. So the fact that people who are on the streets or who are angry with the way things have panned down are calling themselves that term, are using that term for themselves, isn't that an indicator of the kind of massive levels of frustration and anger on the ground? Does that not also tell us about how the government has not lent a patient ear or has not done enough to kind of quell that anger on the ground? Would you agree with that? Or would you say that the government has done absolutely enough at this point? And with the way things are going, the situation is spiraling out of control, but it's not the government's fault. Would you say that?
No. I'm not saying. In a situation like this, everybody has to work much, much harder. There is no doubt that there has to be complete dialogue and a rebuilding of trust between the government and the students. There is absolutely no doubt about that. And I think that Prime Minister Christina has announced the dialogue. Two of our ministers have been nominated, and the dialogue doesn't seem to have started. But we hope that it will start, and before August the 7th, there will be some solution. What I'm trying to say is that the instigation that has come in, and that is where you have the situation of the escalation of violence, because
You
it is
say
being estimated
instigation.
that
Who are you pointing towards when you
yeah,
say instigation?
yes,
Instigated by whom?
yes, I was just coming to that. That the instigation seems to have been by the political participation. Immediately after that press conference, the violence escalated hugely. The estimation was that representatives of Shibir is the students' wing of the Jamaat-e-Islami, had probably entered the protests and were trying to take control of it. As a result of that, the students' wing of the Awami League, the Bangladesh Chhatr League, also entered the protest and were clashing with each other. A lot of the killings have taken place because of that. And of course, the police also were there. But so I'm trying to say that please let us not at this point either wholly condemn Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina or wholly say that the students are entirely right and Sheikh Hasina. So it is a situation which has come up. Whether there's been instigation, we do know that the BNP were regretting immensely that they did not participate in the elections earlier this year, and as a result, they're completely cut
As you're
off from the
saying,
political centers.
As you're saying,
So
it
now,
is a situation of growing concern, absolutely. And we will continue to get an assessment and continue to monitor the latest coming in from on the ground. At this point, of course, unfortunately, very limited information is coming in because of the kind of connectivity restrictions and the blackout that the country is going through. At the moment, we're leaving it there for the moment completely out of time. Thanks very much for being here on the broadcast with us, Ambassador. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the Wion app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.